Let's get started. Create a new composition. Go to Composition, click New. Rename it Color Map 1. For this composition, I'm using 3840 by 2160 pixels. Frame per second is 30 and duration of this composition is 30 seconds. Click OK. Now go to Project window, drag the image to the timeline. Image link is provided in the description down below. Press S for scale and change its value to 231. Add an adjustment layer to this composition. Go to Effects and Presets. And add a mosaic effect to this layer. Change value of horizontal blocks to 254 and vertical blocks to 144. Check Sharp Colors. Again add an adjustment layer to this composition. Rename it to CC. Go to Effects and Presets. And add a Levels effect to this layer. Change the value of output black to 42. Again go to Effects and Presets. And add Hue Saturation effect. Change Master Saturation to 15 and Master Lightness to 2. Now add the Curves effects to this layer and change color channels as per your need. Now create a new composition. Rename it Color Map 2. Right-click on the timeline and add a white solid layer to it. Go to Effects and Presets and add Fractal Noise effect to this layer. Change Contrast to 58 and go to Transform. And change Scale to 617. Change Complexity to 13.5. Add an adjustment layer to this composition. Go to Effects and Presets. And add a Color Key effect to this layer. Change Key Color to black. And change Color Tolerance to 254. Again add an adjustment layer to this composition. Go to Effects and Presets. And add a mosaic effect to this layer. Change value of horizontal blocks to 254 and vertical blocks to 144. Check Sharp Colors. And add a Levels effect to this layer. Change the value of input white to 9. Again create a new composition. Rename it Height Map. Click OK. Now go to Project window, drag the image to the timeline. Press S for scale and change its value to 231. Go to Effects and Presets and add a Tint effect to this image. And add a Levels effect to this layer. Change the value of input black to 29 and input white to 168. Turn on the Clip to Output Black and Clip to Output White. Go to Tools and add a rectangle shape to this layer. Change the color of the rectangle to black. Resize and rotate the shape, so it covers the white road in the image. Now add an adjustment layer to this composition. Go to Effects and Presets. And add a mosaic effect to this layer. Change value of horizontal blocks to 254 and vertical blocks to 144. Check Sharp Colors. Add a black solid layer to this comp. Go to Effects and Presets and add a grid effect to this layer. Change size from to width slider. Change width to 15 and border to 4. Change its color to black. Now again go to Composition and create a new comp. Rename it to Mir Planet. Change its size to 1920 by 1080 pixels. Click OK. Go to Project window and drag all the composition to the timeline, which we created. Hide the visibility. Add a black solid layer to this comp. Rename it to BG. Now go to Effects and Presets and add a 4-color gradient effect to this layer. Change the color as per your need. Again add a solid layer and rename to form back. Add a Trapcode form effect to this layer. Go to base form. Change size of X to 4000, Y to 3210 and size Z to 2000. Change particles X, Y and Z to 7. Change its position to 960, 0, 1000. Go to Particles. Change Sphere Feather to 0 and Size to 10. Change Size Random to 100% and Opacity Random to 100%. Change Blend Mode from Normal to Add. Go to Disperse and Twist. Change Disperse to 100. Go to Fractal Field, and change Displace to 100. Change Flow Evolution from 50 to 5. Add a solid layer and rename to Mir 1. Go to Effects and Presets. Add a Trapcode Mir effect to this layer. Go to Fractal Property. And change the Amplitude layer to Height Map. Now go to Texture. Change Texture layer to Color Map 1. Go up. Go to Geometry. Change Position Z to -500. Change Rotate X to 45. Press Alt button and click Stopwatch next to Rotate Z. Enter time multiply by 7. Change vertices X to 1920, vertices Y to 1080. Change size X to 3820 and size Y to 2160. Go to Repeater. Change instances to 2. And change R Rotate Z to 45. Go to Fractal. Move Timeline to 44 frames. Click Stopwatch next to Amplitude, to add a keyframe. Change its value to 0. Now move Timeline to 95 frames. And change its value to 100. Select both keyframes and press F9 for easy ease. Change Frequency to 4. Change Scroll Y to -1500 and Complexity to 10. Now move the timeline to 88 frames and press Stopwatch next to F-Bend X and F-Bend Y. Now move the timeline to 127 frames and change the value to -0.07. Select both keyframes and press F9 for easy ease. Go to Z range. Change Z range to limit. And change Z minimum value to -10. And Z max value to 0. Open individual amplitude and frequency and change amplitude X and Y to 0. Go to Material and Lighting. Change Light Fall Off to Smooth and change Light Radius and Distance to 1000. Now go to Texture. Change Texture Filter to Solid Face. Go to Shader. Change Shader to Flat. Change Blend to Normal. Change AO Intensity to 50, AO Radius to 20 and AO Lift to 0.50. Go to Visibility and change value of Far, Fog Start and Fog End to 20,000. Now go to Rendering and change Multisample to 16. Again go to Effects and Presets and add Trapcode Shine effect to this layer. Open Pre-Process. Change Threshold to 135. Change Ray Length to 0.30. Go to Colorize. Change base on to alpha and change the colors as per your need. Now move the timeline to 135 frames and press stopwatch next to shine opacity. Change its value to 0. Move the timeline to 202 frames and changes its value to 25. Select both keyframes and press F9 for easy ease. Now duplicate this layer by pressing Ctrl D. Rename it to Mir 2. Go to Geometry and change position Y to 640. And position Z to -600. Go to Texture and change Texture Layer to Color Map 2. Now go to Fractal and Z Range. Change Z Range to Compress and change Z Maximum to -0.50. Now on the motion blur property for all the layers. Go to Fractal and change the values of F-bend X and F-bend Y to -0.06 each. Now add a camera to this composition. Go to Mir 2 and go to Visibility. Press Alt button and click Stopwatch next to Far. Use Pickwick tool and select Camera Layer. And use Camera option. Focus Distance plus 350. Open Camera Property and change Preset to 35mm. Add a null layer to this composition and rename it to Camera Control. Link camera with this layer. Make Camera Control Layer 3D. Go to Transform. Change Anchor Point to 60, 60 and 0. Now move the timeline to 298 frames and click Stopwatch next to Position. Change its value 960, 0 and 0. Move the timeline to 445 frames and change value to 712, 136 and -145. Now move the timeline to 602 frames and changes its value to 712, -122 and -145. Select all keyframes and press F9 for easy ease. Now move the timeline to 1 frame. Click Stopwatch next to X, Y and Z rotation to add keyframes. Change X value to 45, Y value to 23.5 and Z value to 0. Move the timeline to 144 frames. Change X value to 0, Y value to 40 and Z value to 0. Now move the timeline to 298 frames. Change X value to 27, Y value to -34 and Z value to 43. Move the timeline to 445 frames. Change X value to 10, Y value to 0 and Z value to -20. Move the timeline to 602 frames. Change X value to 10, Y value to 40 and Z value to -20. Lastly, move the timeline to 701 frames. And Y value to 0. Select all keyframes and press F9 for easy ease. Go to Camera Properties. Go to Transform. Change Point of Interest 60, 60 and 0. Now move the timeline to 1 frame. Click Stopwatch next to Position to add keyframes. Change its value to 60, 60 and minus 600. Now move the timeline to 144 frame. Change its value to 60, 60 and minus 4500. Move the timeline to 298 frame. Change its value to 60, 60 and minus 3200. Now move the timeline to 445 frame. Change its value to 60, 60 and minus 2000. Change aperture to 100 pixels. And change blur level to 200%. Duplicate form back layer and rename it to form front. Move this layer above Mir 2 layer. Now add a point light. Rename it to light blue 1. Change its color to 185, 100 and 100. Go to Light Options. Move Timeline to 124 frames and click Stopwatch next to Intensity. Change its value to 0. Now move the timeline to 191 frames and change its value to 50%. Now go to Transform. Change its position to 0, 1000 and minus 1000. Also change radius to 3000 and fall off distance to 5000. Duplicate this layer by pressing Ctrl D. Change its position to 2500, 460 and minus 753. Move timeline to 97 frames and click Stopwatch next to Intensity. Change its value to 0. Now move the timeline to 164 frames and change its value to 50%. Go to Mir 1 and go to Trapcode Shine Effect. Press Alt button and click Stopwatch next to Source Point. Use Pickwick tool and select Light Blue 2 layer. Use the script given in the description down below. Use the same process for Mir 2 layer. Now duplicate Light Blue 2 layer and rename it to Light Orange. Change its position to 1000. 0 and minus 1200. Move timeline to 113 frames and click Stopwatch next to Intensity. Change its value to 0. Now move the timeline to 180 frames and change its value to 50%. Change color to 41, 100 and 100. Duplicate light orange layer and rename it to light pink. Change its position to 1500, 500 and minus 1500. Move timeline to 103 frames and click Stopwatch next to Intensity. Change its value to 0. Now move the timeline to 170 frames and change its value to 50%. Change color to 335, 100 and 100. Now add ambient light to this layer. Change its color to white. Move timeline to 88 frames and click stopwatch next to intensity. Change its value to 100. Now move the timeline to 155 frames and change its value to 50%. Go to Mir 2 back and delete the script from Far Invisibility property. Now add a new black solid layer and rename it to Lens Flare. You can also use optical flares. But for this I'm using Redgiant Universal Toolkit. Go to Effects and Presets. And add Universal Null Light Factory effect to this layer. Change flare category to Cinematic Flares. Change cinematic lenses to EH4. Change flare scale to 2. Press Alt button and click stopwatch next to light location. Use Pickwick tool and select light blue 2 layer. Use the script given in the description down below. Go to location tracking. And select Mir 1 in obscuration layer. Check render alpha. Now add a gray solid layer and rename it to grain. Add a noise effect to this layer. Change amount of noise to 5%. And uncheck use color noise. Add adjustment layer. Go to Effects and Presets and add Universal Chromatic Aberration effect to this layer. Change Master Distortion to 0 and Master Scale 0.30. Go to Blur and change Edge Blur to 0 and Radial Blur to 0. Go to Lens Texture. Change Lens Texture to Dirt. And change Texture Layer to Grain Solid Layer. And change Texture Amount to 9. Also change the mode of Grain Layer from Normal to Overlay. Go to Lens Flare. Press T to open opacity. Move timeline to 97 frames and click stopwatch next to opacity. Change its value to 0. Now move the timeline to 164 frames and change its value to 100%. Ease both the keyframes. Now add a black solid layer to the timeline. Press T to open opacity. Move timeline to 18 frames and click stopwatch next to opacity. Change its value to 100. Now move the timeline to 44 frames and change its value to 0%. Ease both the keyframes. Add adjustment layer to the timeline and rename it to CC. Add a level effect to this layer. Change gamma to 0.90. Now add hue and saturation effect to this layer. Change master saturation to 12. Lastly add a curve effect to this layer. Change the color channels as per your need. Go to Project window and add the blur map image to the timeline. Hide its visibility. Now add adjustment layer. Rename it to blur. Now add a camera lens blur effect to this layer. Change blur radius to 30. Change diffraction fringe to 500. Go to blur map and change blur layer to the blur map image. Change blur focal distance to 255. And check repeat edge pixels. Lastly, we will add a text layer to this comp. Go to Composition. And add a new comp. Rename it to Text. Add a text to this comp. Use anything as per your need. Now add a rectangle shape to this comp and resize it accordingly. Change the track matte of text layer to alpha matte. Open text property. And add opacity animation to it. Go to range selector and to advance. Change units from percentage to index. Move timeline to 68 frames and click stopwatch next to start. Now move the timeline to 542 frames and change its value same as end value. Ease both the keyframes. Change opacity to 0%. Go to Transform. Move timeline to 68 frames and click stopwatch next to position. Now move the timeline to 101 frames and change its value to 156 and 123. Now move the timeline to 542 frames and change its value to 156 and minus 2700. Also add a script to position. It is given in the description down below. Write Trapcode Mir above these layer. Go to Mir Planet Comp and add the text comp from the project window. Now add a null layer and rename to Text Control. Link it to text layer. Change text position to 1754, -37 and -947. Go to Text Control. Change its anchor point to 60, 60 and 0. Change its position to 960, 2 and 0. And change Y rotation to 40. Lastly, go to Camera and press Alt button and click Stopwatch next Fall Off Distance. And add a script given in the description down below. That is folks for today. I hope you like my video. If you like the video, please click the like button. If you are new to this channel, please subscribe to it. Thank you and have a nice day.